Hey there, my name is Ken and welcome back to another devlog on Adventure of Tuck. Adventure of Tuck is a roguelike game in which you'll explore new biomes, defeat enemies with unique abilities and make friends with cute little characters. Since the last time I've been mainly working on map generation, and in this devlog I will be mainly going over these changes then. Next to that, I also did a few smaller things on the game, which I will show you later. Before I start explaining why I want to change the current map generation, let's take a look at how the map generation works right now and what the problem with it is. The current map generation works as follows. It always starts off with the initial starter room in the middle, which branches out into 4 different directions. Let's take the top branch for example. First, it will check if the top opening is connected to a room, and if it isn't, then it needs to spawn a room here. If it needs to spawn a room, it will check every adjacent grid tile to check if there aren't already existing rooms, to which it needs to respond accordingly. The best way to explain this is with 2 little examples. And next to that, the rooms that get spawned in are all pre-made and get selected from a list. In the first example, it is trying to spawn a room right here and all the other adjacent grid tiles are empty. Now the spawner has complete freedom on which room to spawn here as long as it has a bottom opening. It can spawn any of the following rooms except for this one. That's because I made it so that the first room can't be a dead end right away, since it could happen that the map would only be 5 rooms large. Then we move on to a second example. It is trying to spawn a room right here and there is an adjacent room to the right of it which has a wall blocking the pathway. Here it can spawn any room as long as it has a bottom opening and no right opening. Lastly, I made it so that rooms can spawn endlessly far and will automatically have a wall if there are 2 rooms around the starter room, which results in a maximum of 25 rooms or 5x5. The problem I have personally with the current map generation is that I often am getting the feeling that I am walking around aimlessly. I have no sense of direction, and after hundreds of playtests I realized that this must change. I've never fully been satisfied with the current map generation, and although it isn't the worst map generation, I think it could be better. Another problem I have is that the number of minimum rooms compared to the maximum rooms that can spawn is basically way too high. It's possible that only 12 rooms spawn, compared to, for example, spawning over a total of 25 rooms. This difference is way too big and makes it very difficult to balance. The last problem I have is that the rooms are extremely large. It can get frustrating when you think you killed all the enemies, but there is one tiny snail hiding in a corner. The one thing that is really nice about this current map generation though, is that the map feels really cohesive. In conclusion, the map generation isn't necessarily bad, but it could definitely be more fun and improved. Before we continue, I'd like to mention that Adventure of Tuck also has a Steam page. So if you enjoy what you're seeing here, then I would appreciate it if you would wishlist the game. Before I made the next map generation, I had to work out a plan on how to do this. I listed down the problems that I had with the previous one and tried to find a solution for each of them. So the first problem we are having with the old map generation was that you sometimes got the feeling that you were walking around aimlessly. The solution for this that I thought of was splitting up the map in 4 more linear branches, with each branch having a different end goal, like the quests or a teleporter to a boss room. The reason that I put linear between quotation marks is because it's not completely linear, but I will get back to that later. Another problem is that there was too big of a difference in the numbers of rooms spawning. The way I want to solve this problem is by having a bare bones map generation that can run a ton of times in a small amount of time to make sure a map spawns with the right number of rooms. With this bare bones map, I mean a map that has no actual rooms yet, but it just plans it out beforehand. After a bare bones map is selected, it will fill in the map appropriately with the right rooms, enemies and other prefabs. The last problem that I've had was that the rooms were extremely large and there were 40x40 tiles. So of course the easy way to solve this is just to make smaller rooms of 30x30 tiles, but I will have a larger amount of rooms then to make up for the missing tiles. For the map generation itself, I split up the generation into 4 different steps. The map generation starts off with a starter room again, which branches out into 4 directions. Each branch will have their own branch name for its corresponding end goal. For the first rooms that spawn, each room will only spawn with an entrance to the starter room. The next entrances will be generated afterwards, as I don't want to make rooms for specific entrances like I did before. After this, each room will spawn a room next to it, but it is not able to go backwards back to the starter room. It does that in order so there's no overlap in rooms, and it will continue doing that until 4 rooms are spawned for each branch, and these rooms are so-called primary rooms. Once this step is done, we now have a total of 17 rooms. After the 4 initial rooms per branch, it will continue spawning more primary rooms. Except for these next rooms, there will be a chance of them spawning, so it's not a certainty. After the 4 rooms have spawned, there's a 90% chance of a 5th primary room spawning. After a 5th room has spawned, there's a 60% chance of a 6th primary room spawning, and so on. You can actually see the odds here on the screen, and as you can see, there is a super small chance of 9 primary rooms spawning for a singular branch. Next to that, the last room per branch will contain the end objective of the branch. Right now, the map looks extremely linear with no side rooms, so it's time to change that. Each primary room will check if it has any empty neighboring spots in which there is a possibility to spawn a side room. It will do this for each empty neighbor spot, so it could be that one primary room spawns 3 side rooms. There's a 20% chance for a primary room to spawn a side room, and each side room afterwards has another 30% chance to spawn another side room, and then this side room again has a 15% chance to spawn another side room. That probably sounds like a lot of side rooms, but the chances for this are fairly small. So the thing I did like about the previous map generation is how cohesive it felt. So I wanted to see if I could bring this back in some way. For each room I wanted to find neighbor rooms of the same branch, but which aren't connected. After this there's a 50% chance of these 2 rooms connecting with each other through a passageway. This causes the branches to be a bit less linear, but still linear enough where you don't feel like you're running in circles. After planning out all of these steps, I actually wrote all the scripts that perform these actions, and here we can see the bare bones map generation in action. I still haven't added the actual 30 by 30 rooms yet, but will be doing so before the next video. The other nice thing I can do with this is slightly alter the prefabs that spawn in each branch to make them just a little bit different from each other. I'm already planning on adding some larger snares to one of the branches and, for example, larger slimes to another. I think this will give the branches a bit more personality and will make them a lot more interesting to explore. What do you think about these changes to the map generation? Do you prefer the old one? Do you like this one? Let me know in the comments. Apart from all the map generation stuff, I have also changed a couple other smaller things. First of all, I made some minor changes to the tutorial. You can now adjust the buttons that you use on the go. And next to that I added one more page to the tutorial explaining how to interact with items and characters. I got this awesome suggestion from my girlfriend to change the text pop-up at the top into this neat little scroll. This was surprisingly easy to make and I think it looks quite cool. I updated the AI of some enemies, which makes them just a bit smarter and able to move around the terrain properly, but also in a way that they can't look through the terrain. And lastly, I added an outro to the boss fight, which I won't show in this video. You can figure out what this looks like once I actually release a demo of the game, which should hopefully be soon. So these are all the changes I've made since the last video. And next up I'll be working on the map generation to actually spawn in the rooms with the prefabs. And also, of course, aside from that, more unique characteristics per branch, like the bigger snails or the bigger slimes. I know this video was quite a long one and a bit more on the technical side, so if you're still watching until this point, I would like to thank you a ton. If you enjoy what you're seeing here, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, as it helps me and my channel. Thank you so much for watching and hopefully see you in the next video. Have a great day as always.